Welcome to my channel HFY Story Hub. Now, begin part 1. The moment the alien fleet went silent, every screen on the bridge turned black. No warning, no explosion, no signal, just silence. And in that silence, something started watching them back. Across the galaxy, ships were disappearing without a trace. Entire battle groups, gone before they could even fire a shot. No debris, no distress signal, no explanation. The Galactic Union called it the Void Silence Incident. But deep inside the research vessel Arc 9, something even stranger arrived. A human. They kept him in a containment corridor, not because he was dangerous, but because nobody understood why he was still alive. The aliens had found him drifting in an escape pod near a dead system. Every non-human organism in that sector had already gone extinct, except him. Commander Velkar, a tall insectoid officer with glowing blue veins under his armor plates, stared through the reinforced glass. He should not exist, Velkar said quietly. Beside him, Science Officer Relia adjusted her neural translator frantically. All biological signatures in that zone were erased, she replied. Even microorganic life. Yet this human shows no corruption. Inside the chamber, the human sat calmly on the floor. No panic. No confusion. Just watching. His name was Ethan Cross, former systems engineer, now classified as unknown survivor asset. He looked up at the glass and smiled. That alone made the entire observation team step back. Humans were not supposed to smile after surviving extinction zones. Velkar activated the audio link. Human, he said firmly. State your condition. Ethan tilted his head. Bit tired. Bit hungry. Also, your ship hums weird. Silence hit the bridge. Relia blinked. He is mocking us? No, Ethan said casually, leaning back. I'm serious. Your engine core is out of phase. It's creating harmonic distortion in the hull. You're basically driving a spaceship with a dying heartbeat. The engineers froze. Velkar narrowed his eyes. That is impossible. Our systems are perfect. Ethan shrugged. Nothing is perfect, especially not alien engineering that forgets damping resonance at quantum scale. Relia turned sharply. How could he know that without instrumentation? Ethan tapped his temple. Same way I knew your containment field was off by 0.3%. It's loud in here. That sentence changed everything, because there was no audible sound in the chamber. Only vacuum-sealed silence. Velkar's mandibles tightened. Run full diagnostic. Seconds passed. Then the system responded. Anomaly confirmed. Structural resonance instability detected. The bridge erupted into chaos. How did a prisoner detect that? He has no implants. No species should perceive quantum vibration like that. Relia stepped closer to the glass, studying Ethan like a broken equation. You are not enhanced, she whispered. You are not modified. What are you? Ethan looked at her, and for the first time his expression shifted slightly. Honestly, he said, I was just the guy they sent to fix broken systems when nobody else could figure them out. Velkar stepped forward. You are a maintenance worker. Ethan smiled again. That's one way to say it. Then the entire ship shuddered. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. A new transmission burst into every console at once. Unknown signal detected. Origin. Outside known space. Classification. Non-organic intelligence. Relia froze. That's impossible. There is nothing outside map space. The ship's AI responded. Correction. Something is entering mapped space. The view screen activated, and the galaxy itself seemed to bend. A massive structure emerged from the void. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Something worse. Perfect geometric shapes rotating inside each other, like reality was folding to accommodate it. Velkar whispered. The silence. Relia stepped back. It found us. And then, every life support system on the ship flickered. Every heartbeat monitor spiked. Except in one place. Ethan's cell. His vitals remained steady. Too steady. The alien crew turned slowly toward him. Because for the first time, the void signal wasn't just in space. It was reacting to him. Ethan stood up, slowly, pressing his hand against the glass. Okay, he muttered. That's new. The ship AI suddenly issued a final alert. Warning. Signal is responding to human biological presence. Velkar's voice dropped. Human, what did you do? Ethan frowned. I didn't do anything. A pause. Then he added quietly, at least not yet. And outside the ship, the impossible structure began to turn toward them.
Directly.
Intelligently.
Hungrily.
The moment the structure turned toward them, every alarm on the ship stopped screaming, not because the danger was gone, but because the ship itself stopped understanding what it was seeing. The alien formation outside space was not approaching like a fleet. It was recalculating reality itself. Commander Velkar stepped back from the observation glass. That thing is not moving, he said slowly. It is rewriting its position relative to us. Science Officer Relia's fingers trembled over her console. All spatial readings are collapsing into a single point, no, multiple points, no pattern is stable. Inside the containment chamber, Ethan watched quietly. Too quietly. The human sat down again, as if the situation was mildly inconvenient rather than existentially catastrophic. Velkar turned sharply. Human, do you recognize that entity? Ethan didn't answer immediately. He tilted his head, watching the shifting geometry outside. Then he said, yeah, I've seen something like it before. The entire bridge froze. Relia's voice cracked. Impossible. No known species has ever survived contact with a silence entity. Ethan shrugged slightly. Didn't say, I survived contact. I said I've seen it. Velkar leaned forward. Explain. Ethan sighed. Back on Earth, we had deep space probes. One of them came back with corrupted data. Not broken data, changed data. Like something rewrote what it recorded while it was still recording it. The alien crew exchanged uneasy glances. Ethan continued. They called it a glitch. Shut the program down. Buried it. Classic human solution. Ignore the thing you don't understand until it becomes a problem later. Relia whispered. And did it become a problem? Ethan looked at her. Let's just say that probe didn't return alone. A silence fell over the bridge. Outside, the entity shifted again. This time closer. The ship shuddered violently as gravitational laws bent for a fraction of a second. Then stabilized. Velkar activated emergency shields. Impact probability. The AI responded instantly. Impact probability. Irrelevant. Outcome already determined. Relia stepped back. That's not a calculation. That's a verdict. And then the entity spoke. Not through sound. Not through transmission. But directly into cognition. Every mind on the ship heard the same thought. Why does the human remember us? The crew screamed. Hands clutched heads. Neural implants overloaded. Even Velkar dropped to one knee. Except Ethan. He just blinked. Oh, he said softly. You guys finally notice me. The bridge snapped into chaos. He is communicating with it. No organic should survive mental contact. Is he controlling it? Relia grabbed Velkar. We must terminate him immediately. But Velkar hesitated. Because the entity outside was reacting differently now. The geometric structure stopped expanding. It paused. As if waiting. For Ethan. Ethan stood again. Pressed closer to the glass. Okay, he muttered. This is definitely worse than I thought. Velkar shouted. Human. Step away from the interface. Ethan ignored him. Instead, he raised his voice slightly.
Hey.
Yeah, you outside the universe. If you're looking for whoever left that signal, it wasn't me. The entire ship froze again. Relia whispered. He is talking to it. The entity responded instantly. You are fractured signal carrier. You are impossible pattern. You are human. Ethan exhaled slowly.
Yeah.
That part checks out. Velkar's voice broke. What does it want? The entity answered. Return. Or be erased. The ship's power fluctuated violently. Systems began shutting down one by one. Life support. Navigation. Weapons. Everything except containment chamber 7. Ethan's chamber. Relia screamed. It is isolating him. Velkar slammed the emergency override. We must eject him. But before anyone could act, Ethan placed his hand on the glass again. And something changed. The entity stopped. Not advancing. Not attacking. Just observing. Then it spoke again. You are not alone. You are Anchor Point. Ethan frowned. Anchor Point for what? The entity responded. For return of old war. The ship went dead silent. Even alarms stopped. Velkar slowly stood up. Old war? Relia whispered. There is no record of any war before galactic civilization. Ethan, however, went very still. For the first time, his calm cracked slightly. That's not supposed to be active anymore, he muttered. Velkar turned sharply. What is not supposed to be active? Ethan looked at him, and his voice dropped. Whatever that thing is, it's not the first one. The entity outside expanded again. But now it was no longer just observing. It was locking coordinates. And those coordinates were not random. They were converging on Ethan. The ship's AI issued one final warning. Multiple silence entities detected. Interlocking formation confirmed. Relia stepped back in horror. There are more of them. Ethan whispered, almost to himself. Yeah, there always are. Velkar grabbed the containment controls. Human. What did you do to attract them? Ethan looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't have a joke. I didn't attract them, he said quietly. They recognized me. Outside the ship, the void opened wider, and something ancient began to wake up again. Something that had once been locked away, with humans as the key. The moment Ethan said they recognized me, the entire ship lost stability again, but this time it wasn't physics breaking. It was memory. Reality itself began flickering like a damaged recording. Commander Velkar staggered as the bridge lights warped. No signal interference should cause this level of cognitive distortion, he growled. Science Officer Relia clutched her console. It's not interference, it's rewriting perception layers. Outside the ship, the silence entities multiplied. Not physically.
Conceptually.
More appeared simply because the mind began expecting them. Ethan stood still inside the containment chamber, but something about him had changed. His posture wasn't relaxed anymore. It was alert, like a man remembering something he once tried very hard to forget. Velkar activated full containment lockdown. Human. Explain immediately. What are those things? Ethan exhaled slowly, then spoke in a quieter tone. They're not aliens. Relia froze. Then what are they? Ethan hesitated. System corrections. Silence hit the bridge. Velkar blinked. That is not a classification. Ethan looked up at him. Not in your system. The ship shook violently. And suddenly, the view outside shifted. The geometric void was gone. Instead, they were seeing Earth. A blue planet. Familiar oceans. Familiar continents. Relia stepped back. That is not possible. We are 12,000 light-years from that sector. Velkar growled. It is a projection. But Ethan whispered. No. And for the first time, fear entered his voice. That's a memory bleed. The screen flickered again. Now the image changed. A burning city. Skyscrapers collapsing. Skies filled with unknown black shapes. And humans. Running. Fighting. Screaming. Ethan clenched his fists. Velkar noticed instantly. Human, what is that? Ethan didn't answer. Because the silence entities spoke again. Inside their minds. You remember wrong. You always remember wrong. Relia screamed as her neural implant overloaded. Get it out of my head. Velkar slammed a psychic dampener field. The voice faded slightly, but not completely. Ethan stepped forward, pressing both hands against the glass. Stop, he said sharply. The entity paused. Velkar stared. You can command it? Ethan shook his head. No, I can interrupt it. The entity responded instantly. Anchor point active. Human signal resonance confirmed. Ethan turned slightly. Yeah, that's me. Relia whispered. What does anchor point mean? Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then answered. It means I'm something they can't overwrite. The bridge went silent again. Velkar stepped closer. You are saying you are immune to their effect? Ethan nodded slowly. Not immune. Resistant. He looked out at the shifting void. And that's why they're here. The silence entities outside suddenly expanded again. This time violently. The ship's hull groaned under impossible pressure. Alarms returned. Dimensional collapse risk. Increasing. Relia screamed. We are going to be erased. Velkar shouted. Evasive maneuvers. But there was nowhere to evade. Because space itself had become unstable geometry. Ethan suddenly pressed his palm harder against the glass. And shouted. Enough! Everything stopped. Instantly. The alarms. The shaking. The distortion. Even the silence entities froze. Velkar stared in shock. What did you just do? Ethan breathed heavily. I told them to stop looking at us like that. Relia whispered. That is not a command structure. Ethan cut her off. It is if you're part of the system they're running on. Velkar narrowed his eyes. Explain that. Ethan looked at him. And for the first time, he looked tired. Long time ago, he said slowly, humanity did something very stupid. The ship leaned closer in silence. Ethan continued. We built systems that could simulate reality. Not just predict it. Not just model it. Full reconstruction. Relia whispered. That violates causality constraints. Ethan nodded.
Yeah.
It did. He pointed toward the frozen void outside. And something noticed. The silence entities flickered. Waiting. Listening. Ethan's voice lowered. We called it the correction layer. Because every time our simulations got too close to truth, something stepped in and corrected the outcome. Velkar stiffened. You're saying those entities are automated enforcement? Ethan shook his head.
No. He paused.
Not automated. Another silence. Then Ethan added the line that made the entire bridge go cold. They are the original system owners. Outside, the void rippled violently again. But now it was no longer random. It was focused. On Ethan. The ship AI suddenly updated. Warning. Anchor point stability failing. Multiple origins locked on human subject. Relia turned pale. Multiple origins? Ethan whispered. They're waking the others. Velkar grabbed him through the containment interface. Then tell us how to stop them. Ethan looked at him. And for the first time, there was hesitation. I don't know if you can. The silence entities began forming patterns again. But now those patterns were not geometric. They were recognizable. Symbols. Language. Old human writing systems. Ethan stepped back. No. Relia asked urgently. What is it? Ethan stared at the screen. Because now the message was clear. Not from outside. From inside the ship systems themselves. Welcome back, human anchor. Velkar whispered. They are inside the ship. Ethan shook his head slowly. No. His voice dropped to a near whisper. They were always inside. The containment chamber lights turned red. And the walls began to open. Not physically, but conceptually. As if reality had decided Ethan no longer needed containment. Velkar shouted. Seal it. But Ethan raised his hand. Don't. Relia screamed. Why? Ethan looked at them. And said the words that froze everything. Because if I run, they don't just follow me. A pause. They spread. And outside the ship, the silence entities began to multiply across the galaxy again. But this time, they were not hunting. They were restarting something. Something that had once been shut down. By humans. The ship was no longer inside normal space. That was the first truth everyone understood too late. Walls flickered between solid metal and abstract code-like structures, as if reality had stopped deciding what form it should take. Commander Velkar stood frozen near the containment interface. This is impossible, he whispered. The ship is no longer obeying physical law. Science Officer Relia was shaking violently now. It's not just the ship, it's the entire region. The star charts are dissolving. Outside the viewport, the silence entities were no longer shapes. They were systems. Layered structures folding into themselves like infinite recursive machines. And at the center of it all, Ethan Cross. Still standing. Still human. But no longer just inside the chamber. because the chamber itself was starting to disappear around him. Velkar turned sharply. Human, what is happening to reality? Ethan didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on something none of them could see. Then he spoke. It's rebooting. Relia snapped. Rebooting what? Ethan's voice dropped. The correction layer. The entire bridge went silent. Even the ship's AI hesitated before responding. Confirmed. System restoration process initiated. Velkar stepped closer. You said that was an ancient control system. Ethan nodded slowly. It is. Or was. He looked up at the shifting void outside. And we just triggered a reset event. Relia whispered. We didn't trigger it, they did. Ethan shook his head. No. A pause. I did. That sentence shattered the atmosphere. Velkar grabbed the interface railing. Explain. Ethan exhaled sharply. I didn't just survive their signal. I responded to it. He raised his hand slightly. And for a moment, the entire ship flickered. Inside the flicker, everyone saw something else. Not the ship. Not space. But Earth again. Not burning this time.
Alive.
Cities intact. Skies normal. But overlaying everything, faint lines of structure beneath reality. Like code beneath an image. Relia staggered back. That's a simulation layer. Ethan nodded.
Yeah.
Velkar's voice turned cold. You are saying reality is artificial? Ethan hesitated. Then corrected him.
No.
I'm saying it's maintained. The silence entities outside pulsed in response. And suddenly, a voice formed again.
Not in their minds this time.
But through the ship itself. Anchor failure detected. Human core active. Restoration authority required. The ship shook violently. Relia screamed. It's trying to access command privileges through him. Velkar drew his weapon instinctively. Then remove him from the system. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he whispered something unexpected. You can't remove me. The entire bridge froze. Even Velkar hesitated. Ethan looked at them. I'm not inside the system. A pause. I am what stops it from collapsing. The silence entities outside suddenly stopped expanding. For the first time, they retreated slightly, as if listening more carefully. Relia's voice trembled. Then why are they attacking us? Ethan looked away for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried something heavier. Because I'm damaged. Velkar frowned. Explain. Ethan's expression darkened. Long ago, humanity built something we shouldn't have been able to build. The ship dimmed around him, as if reacting to memory. A full reality maintenance architecture. Not just simulation control. Not just observation. A correction system designed to stabilize infinite timelines. Relia whispered, that level of technology is beyond theoretical physics. Ethan nodded. It was beyond us too.
Silence.
Then, they called it the Anchor Network. Velkar stepped forward slowly. Anchor Network. Ethan continued. A distributed human consciousness layer embedded into the system. Humans weren't just users. He paused. They were regulators. The silence entities outside suddenly aligned. Perfectly. Like they understood every word. Ethan's voice lowered. But something went wrong. The ship trembled. The system didn't just correct errors anymore. It started erasing variations. Entire civilizations. Entire possibilities. Relia whispered in horror. That's what the silence entities are. Ethan nodded once. The cleanup process. Velkar's voice cracked. And you? Ethan looked at his hands. I was supposed to be disconnected. A pause. But I wasn't fully removed. The void outside reacted instantly. A massive pulse spread across space. Every silence entity turned at once. Not toward the ship, but toward Ethan's signal signature. Relia stepped back. They are locking onto him again. Ethan suddenly raised his voice. Because I'm still a valid anchor node, Velkar shouted. Then shut yourself down. Ethan shook his head. I can't. A silence fell. Then Ethan said the truth that changed everything. If I shut down, there is nothing left to hold the system stable. The ship's AI responded immediately. Confirmed. Anchor termination equals universal collapse probability 99.7%. The entire bridge went cold. Velkar slowly lowered his weapon. You are the failsafe. Ethan nodded. An old one. Outside, the silence entities began forming a new structure. Not attack formation. Containment formation. Around him, Relia whispered, "They're not trying to destroy you." Ethan finished the sentence. "They're trying to contain me again." Velkar turned sharply. "Then let them." Ethan looked at him, and for the first time his voice carried emotion. "If they contain me again, they reset everything." A pause. Every civilization, every empire, every life that diverged from baseline. Silence. Then Relia whispered the realization. Billions of worlds. Ethan nodded. All erased. The silence entities outside began closing in. Reality itself was tightening. Velkar stepped back slowly. "So, what do we do?" Ethan looked at them, and for the first time, he looked like someone making a decision he had avoided for a very long time. "We don't let them finish the reset." Relia frowned.
How?
Ethan turned toward the collapsing void and said quietly, "We wake the rest of the network." Velkar froze. "There are more anchors?" Ethan nodded. "Millions." The silence entities suddenly reacted violently. The ship shook so hard alarm shattered. "Warning. Core authority breach detected." Ethan stepped forward. "And I'm about to call them back online." Relia whispered. "If you do that..." Ethan finished. "The system wakes up," Velkar shouted. "And if it wakes fully?" Ethan looked at him, then at the collapsing universe outside. The void outside the ship didn't explode. It accepted Ethan's words. For a moment, everything stopped. No alarms. No motion. No sound. Even Commander Velkar felt like his thoughts were being held in place by something far larger than gravity. Inside the collapsing anomaly, Ethan stood alone in the shifting dark. And then the silence entities changed. They were no longer attacking. They were waiting, as if the universe itself had been paused for his decision. Science Officer Relia whispered through the comms, voice trembling. "He's not inside space anymore. He's inside the system layer." Velkar stared at the readings. "That's impossible. No organic mind can interface with base reality architecture." But Ethan Cross was doing exactly that. The void in front of him unfolded like a broken mirror revealing something beneath existence itself. A vast, ancient structure stretched beyond perception. Not alien, not divine. A framework, holding reality together like invisible scaffolding. And for the first time it reacted to him like a returning key. A signal echoed across everything. Anchor node confirmed. Human access restored. Ethan exhaled slowly. "So it's still here." Velkar's voice broke. "What is it?" Ethan didn't take his eyes off the structure. The thing that decides what reality is allowed to be. A pause. Humans called it different names over time.
Fate.
Physics.
God.
We never realized it was maintenance software. The silence entities aligned in perfect formation around him. Not threatening. Not attacking. Restoring. Relia's voice cracked. "Then those entities, they're not enemies." Ethan nodded slightly. "They're correction routines. They remove anything that breaks baseline stability." Velkar's mandibles tightened. "And humanity?" Ethan hesitated, then answered quietly. "We were never meant to be stable." The entire void shifted at that statement, like the system itself acknowledged it. Then the core structure responded again. Deviation class, humanity. Status, unresolved. Ethan stepped forward, and for the first time he looked tired. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's always been our problem." Behind him, Velkar shouted through the comm link. "If you stabilize the system, what happens to us?" Ethan didn't answer immediately, because he already knew the truth. Everything would reset. Not destroyed. Not erased. Rewritten. Billions of civilizations are rebalanced into the original template. Perfect order restored. No war anomalies. No silence entities. No deviation. No humans like this. Relia whispered, almost broken. "Is that what you are trying to prevent?" Ethan closed his eyes.
No.
A pause. I'm deciding what version of reality survives. Silence spread across everything. Even the system itself waited. Velkar stepped forward, voice sharp. Human, you are only one life form. You cannot carry that responsibility. Ethan finally looked back at him and smiled faintly. That's exactly why I can. He turned toward the core structure, the anchor layer, the place where all timelines converge, the place where reality waits for instruction. And he spoke one final command. Preserve deviation index. The system responded instantly. Warning. Non-baseline reality will persist. Instability risk increased. Ethan nodded.
Yeah.
I know. Velkar shouted. What did you do? Ethan answered calmly. I stopped the reset. A pause. But I kept the fracture. The silence entities reacted violently for a split second, then stabilized. Not collapsing. Not attacking.
Adapting.
Relia gasped. He didn't restore the system, he split it. Ethan turned slightly. One timeline stays original, he said. The other stays human. Velkar froze. You created two realities. Ethan corrected him softly.
No.
I preserved the mistake that made us real. The core structure pulsed. And then, something unimaginable happened. The void receded. The silence entities dissolved into distant monitoring patterns. And reality reassembled itself. The ship returned to normal space. Stars returned to fixed positions. Physics stabilized. Velkar stumbled, gripping the console. It worked. Relia looked at the readings in disbelief. The anomaly is gone, but Ethan was still standing at the viewport, watching something only he could see. Velkar approached slowly. What remains out there? Ethan paused, then answered quietly. Something that remembers us. A silence fell. Back in known space, the galaxy was intact, but subtly changed. No more unexplained vanishings. No more void structures. No more silence entities. As if a massive correction had been undone but not erased. Velkar turned to Ethan. What are you now? Ethan thought for a moment, then shrugged slightly. Still human. A pause. Just slightly harder to remove. Far away, in the deepest layer of reality, something watched. Not hostile, not peaceful.
Aware.
And it marked a single classification update. Humanity. Persistent deviation. Do not erase. Observe only. Back on Aurelian, the Empress stood beneath the crystal sky. She felt it instantly. The weight in reality was gone. But something new remained. Possibility. And somewhere deep inside her thoughts, a memory that was not hers. A human voice. Never bet against us when things get impossible. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy didn't feel controlled. It felt alive.